Well, it is election day across the country. While a lot of talk has been on the race for the president, the other big story is the U.S. Senate. There are 35 Senate seats up for grabs. 23 of them are currently being held by Republicans as Democrats hope to flip those seats and take control of the Senate. And Democrats will need to win at least 4 of those races to take control. Now, one of the most closely watched and expensive Senate races in the entire country is right here in the state of Arizona between Republican incumbent Senator Martha McSally and retired NASA astronaut Democrat Mark Kelly. He joins us right now to talk about this race, and we thank you very much for taking the time. We know you've been busy campaigning. What are your final thoughts going into today?
Well, it's an important day. Folks are already lining up to vote. I've been encouraging folks for the last few days, especially to get their ballots turned in if it's sitting on their kitchen table, get it sent in, drop it off at a drop box or a polling place. And if you haven't do that, have a plan to vote on election day. We've got what looks like a record turnout here. We could even exceed 3 million votes in Arizona. That hasn't happened before. And that's a great thing for our democracy.
Most polls have had you favored all along, but the recent daily orbital poll has McSally gaining ground. How much faith do you put in the polls, and what would that say if she were to able to make up some ground? At one point, you had a double-digit lead.
Well, the only poll that matters, and I've been saying this for a year and a half, is the one on election day. I mean, that's the critical, thing. And that at this point, that it is election day, we just need folks to get out and vote. I always thought that this is going to be a tight election, and I'm convinced it is today. So I'm encouraging folks, regardless of who they're voting for, even if they're voting for Senator McSally, to get out there and get their ballot in. It's really an important thing to do.
Prior to becoming a Senate candidate, you were an anti-gun rights advocate. We haven't heard much about your plans if you were elected and were able to take in the Senate. A lot of folks have some questions about, would you infringe on their Second Amendment rights?
Hey, Javier, I'm not, well, let me just say, I'm a gun owner and I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I have more firearms than your average Arizonan. And I think our rights and traditions on gun ownership is incredibly important in our country, especially in the state of Arizona. But that's not inconsistent with keeping communities safer from gun violence.
If elected, you would become one of 2 Democratic senators for the first time since 1953. But many are worried that you would fall in line with whatever Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi wants. How do you ensure the voters out there that you would vote your conscience?
Well, I think independence is important. The state of Arizona has a history of that. Senator John McCain working across the aisle to getting things done, not being beholden to his political party. The same thing with my wife, Gabby. Hey, Javier, I was a registered independent 2 years ago. I am committed to working across the aisle, making decisions for Arizona and for our country. I don't take corporate PAC money, so you're not going to see me beholden to some big pharmaceutical company or a big oil company. It's one thing that distinguishes me from Senator McSally is I haven't taken a dime of corporate PAC money from day one of this campaign. Her campaign's been funded by millions of dollars from corporate PAC money. So I am, somebody who is committed to working in an independent way to solve some of the hard problems we face.
This has been a very contentious race, and we know a lot of money has poured into the state of Arizona. As you round out the campaign here, any regrets about what's happened so far?
No, not at all. But you're right about the, outside money. That's why we need campaign finance reform. This is something that Senator John McCain worked on for years and got legislation passed to get that big corporate money out of our political system, the dark money that comes from corporate PACs and other organizations, and that's been undermined since then. We've got to work back towards that. Campaigns should be, financed by individuals. I'm very proud of how our campaign was run. A lot of small dollar donations, not that big corporate PAC money. So, I'm with Senator McCain on this. I mean, we need reform of the system.
We're right in the middle of a pandemic, and it seems that campaigning was a little different from Republicans versus Democrats. We saw you out in the last couple weeks or so, hitting the streets and out and about. Any regrets that you didn't do that sooner?
Not at all. My number one priority has been public health throughout this year. When we could safely get out and meet people outside with significant social distancing and wearing masks, towards the end of the campaign, we were able to do that. But I spent every single day, hours every single day, meeting with Arizonans through Zoom and other platforms, listening to the issues that they're facing, often issues that they're worried about: healthcare, keeping their healthcare if they have a pre-existing condition. There's 2.8 million Arizonans that are in that situation. Senator McSally has voted 4 times to eliminate or undermine those protections. The cost of healthcare is too much, and then we have an economy that has been devastated by this pandemic, and we have a response from the federal government. Well, let me just say we don't have a response. We still don't have a plan. Senator McSally hasn't spoken up to help move this administration towards a plan that'll keep people safe. We need new leadership, and we need change in Washington, D.C. so we can get this country back on track.
We thank you very much for spending some time with us this morning. We know you're very busy going into the last day. We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Javier.
About 15 minutes ago, we spoke with Kelly. Joining us now to talk about this race is Senator Martha McSally. We know you are absolutely busy, so we thank you very much for spending some time this morning. Tell me your final thoughts going into today.
Well, thanks, Javier. I really appreciate being with you this morning. I hope everybody's hanging in there. We've got just 12 hours to make this final decision about the direction of our country. I'm a little hoarse because I've been out there fighting for every last vote. And Arizonans, this isn't about me. It's been an honor to be your fighter for lower taxes, a strong economy, rebuilding our military, securing the border, and so many other things. I tied for the most bills signed into law in my first year as your senator and the 6th most bipartisan senator. But at this moment in time, this choice is about you. What kind of country do you want to live in? Our race will decide the Senate majority. It will decide the direction of the country. So if you want to continue to have our freedoms, the very things that many of us put our lives on the line for, you want to have a strong economy that we will rebuild so there's opportunity for you and your kids. If you want safety and security, support for law enforcement, Border Patrol, and our military, then I'm your girl. I'm asking for your vote. We are dead heat right now. It's all about turnout. Get your friends and family out there. Vote for your future.
For most of the campaign, you've actually trailed your opponent, Mark Kelly, but a recent data orbital poll shows you guys neck and neck. How much faith do you put in these polls, and what does that say about your campaign and your message if you were able to gain that much ground?
Well, I've already told you, this is a battleground state. It always has been. We knew this would decide the Senate majority and the direction of our country. That's why, unfortunately, so much money is poured in here trying to get my opponent in there so he could be the 51st vote for the radical left, which is out of touch with Arizona values and American values. So we knew it was always going to come down to the wire. And it's about getting that vote out there and making sure that every vote and every voice is heard. So if you want a fighter, if you want somebody who's stood up for your freedoms, provide an opportunity for you and your family, provide opportunity in the future. If you want a hopeful future, not lockdowns while we defeat this virus and protect the vulnerable, then I'm asking for your vote. But it's all about the turnout. It's not about the polls. It's about everybody getting with your friends and neighbors and your coworkers and everyone in your family and have your voice heard today. Vote for freedom.
When you talk about lockdowns, I know you and I have spoken about the coronavirus in the past. I know you're very knowledgeable, but if Dr. Anthony Fauci or any of the health experts recommended another lockdown, would that be necessary as you kind of speak out against it?
Well, look, we don't need the nation to lock down, and that's what will happen if my opponent gets elected. We need to continue to protect the vulnerable. Everybody did their part early on in this first-in-a-century pandemic to flatten the curve, to provide time to invest in therapeutics and vaccines, to support our healthcare workers. But we also need people to be able to safely and sensibly return to work, to put food on the table, kids to be able to be at school safely while we protect the vulnerable. There's challenges with despair and other elements of the lockdowns that we don't even quite know. with risk of addiction and suicide and other things. So we can do these things together by moving forward and defeating this virus, which we will, without the devastating one-size-fits-all government overreach that we would have should the other side win.
Let me ask you about health care, because that has been a key topic here in this campaign. In the past, you voted against protecting pre-existing conditions. You now say that you're in favor of protecting those. However, those are attached to the law with the Affordable Care Act, which is expected to go before the Supreme Court. So if it's struck down by the Supreme Court, how will you protect pre-existing conditions if they're attached to that law?
Well, Harry, the premise of your question is not accurate. I will always support pre-existing conditions. Again, the false narrative is that Obamacare equals the only way, as if it is, protecting pre-existing conditions. But I meet Arizonans every single day, many with pre-existing conditions, who can't afford their health insurance under Obamacare, who lost their health insurance under Obamacare, can't afford their premiums or deductibles, or had to pay a fine because they couldn't afford the unaffordable health insurance. So what I'm fighting for is protecting pre-existing conditions and initiatives that will bring the cost down so families can afford their health insurance and the health care that they choose. What my opponent and the left will do, should they prevail, is have the full government takeover of our health care. They agree it's not working, but what they want is for the 1 or 2 step to the government takeover, which would collapse the private health insurance market. 178 million Americans would lose their employer health insurance. Medicare as we know it would be collapsed. Rural hospitals and private practices will close. Taxes will go up and quality will go down. And I'm not for that. But this is the agenda should the other side prevail. I'm standing in the way of that. I'm committed to protecting pre-existing conditions. I've been fighting for the vulnerable my whole life, but I'm also committed to making sure that you have the choice for the best health care for you and your family.
Well, we thank you very much for taking some time today. We know it's going to be a busy day as you finish off this campaigning and race, so we wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, Harry. Everybody get out there and vote. If you want freedom, opportunity, and safety and security for your family, then I'm your girl.